Welcome to the Restitutor Orbis channel, and thank you for joining me today. We're going to be taking a look at Evidence of Tartaria, photo album from the 1850s. And in this particular photo, you see a couple power generators and what looks to be a submarine. Before I get into the presentation, I just wanted to give a little bit of credit. I have seen this photo in other researchers' videos. I believe it was UAP channel, and I think he had some great commentary on it if I'm remembering correctly. But if I'm not, please correct me in the comments. I've got a theme for this video, and it goes against how I usually conduct these videos when I do these explorations because, well, we know that photos can be altered, they can be changed, they might not necessarily be conveying the entire truth. But we're going to look at them today as though they are, and we're going to examine what they're telling us. And going back to the 5 eras theory, what we're really looking at is right here at 1850. Right now, the evidence that I've looked at, my updated theory, is that the reset occurred in 1850, so the first timeline. Right around 1850, either right before it or right after it, that was where the reset occurred, and we're going to be looking at the time frame of photos of the period right after the reset to see if there's any clues or if there's any evidence of a previous civilization existing. I believe that there are plenty of clues, and I also believe that there's even evidence that there are enclaves or survivors of the previous civilization that were scattered around the land, the world, the realm, whatever we want to call it. And I think there are numerous examples of that. So what does official history tell us this photo is? The Chattermanzil Palace wall in India, which was destroyed by mutineers during the Indian Rebellion of 1857, also known as the Sepoy Mutiny. And of course, we already pointed out the amazing Antiquitech, or power generation, features on the building and even on the ship here. We also see some amazing architecture that looks like it's been through something rough. Of course, we'll be told it's just natural erosion, it's difficult weather. And then, yes, I'm not going to overlook it. What looks to be either a submarine or submersible that's potentially washed up ashore here. And we see a lot of junk that's in this little harbor inlet right here, and it's quite remarkable. But what exactly is this? I mean, you see a couple fins. I mean, could this be a submarine? Well, believe it or not, our mainstream history does tell us that submarines existed during this time. Yes, I was a little shocked, but if anybody was big into watching TNT or Turner Broadcasting in the 90s, you might remember a little TV show called The Hunley. It was a made-for-TV movie about a Confederate States submarine that conducted the first successful submarine attack in 1864. It even had Donald Sutherland in it. So I was surprised to do a little research and found out that the USS Alligator was actually the U.S. Navy's first submarine, and lo and behold, it was created, at least I didn't say founded, built in 1862. And it was based on a design by a French engineer because, of course it'd be a French engineer who would have something this amazing. And apparently submarines just seem to come up out of the blue, and there were practical examples in the 1860s or even the late 1850s. Now, yes, people will tell me, well, what about the turtle from the Revolutionary War? Yes, it was a one-person submersible, and it seemed to be crank and screw driven. But in any event, we do have the wreckage here on the right. This isn't the Alligator, it's actually the Hunley. They did recover the original Confederate submarine, supposedly. Although if you look at it, it looks more like a torpedo. So who knows exactly what was going on or what they're telling us? It's just amazing when you really pull apart the official narrative and we're told that, yes, we had submarines in the 1860s, because why not? And down here in the lower left, you can see the plans from the USS Alligator. So going back to this, not sure if this was actually a submarine, the remnants of the submarine. What I would suspect is if this was just after the reset and the powers that be were resettling many of the areas, they no doubt found a lot of remaining buildings, and they found a lot of remaining equipment, whether it was ships or whatever, and of course the technology with it. So this could have been designs that they found, remaining ships or submersibles all over the place that were not destroyed in the reset, whatever it truly involved. And they were able to either extrapolate designs or get working designs going again. Not sure, but it definitely seems to lead to that indication. Let's move on. A group of Gurkha soldiers with their British officer during the Indian Mutiny or Great Sepoy Rebellion of 1857. Now look how well they're equipped and dressed, and you really have to wonder what's really going on here. Is this a legitimate military operation to suppress a rebellion? Or is there something else going on here? If you look in the nature of conflicts, and the real purpose of this video overall is to introduce some other major clues as to how the world responded after the last reset, and what were the methods in which ensuring that the reset stuck and there was no memory of the previous civilization. And I believe there were three approaches. They utilized conflict, and the conflict was masking the destruction of what remained of the enclaves. They used asylums for the people who did not want to assimilate into the new society or the new world. And then they also had indoctrination, which was gradually implemented in education and society and the major institutions. I'm going to do many videos that are going to follow up on those three themes and how they implemented this. But what this picture could be is you could be seeing a picture of the expeditionary force that was sent to destroy one of the enclaves, and then they simply had a different name for it. Oh, they were suppressing the Indian Mutiny or the Great Sepoy Rebellion in 1857. Yes, see, we got a great picture. And yes, I do think there are clues that the U.S. Civil War was the same thing. But there are many conflicts on record that occurred between 1850 and 1870, and in fact, the rest of the 19th century. So all in good time. The inauguration of President James Buchanan at the east front of the United States Capitol building, March 4th, 1857. Well, there's a lot going on in this picture. Oh, I mean, what is this? I can't tell if this is a ladder or what. This is an amazing picture, but yet the quality of it is either eroded or there's something else going on. I don't know. You'd think you'd get a better picture of a presidential inauguration. And for those of us into U.S. history, James Buchanan was the ineffective U.S. president whose poor leadership allowed the United States Civil War to start. At least that's what official history tells us. And of course, you can see on the Capitol building the amazing columns and some remarkable statues and people just standing on the roof. You know, it's always people standing on the roof. They seem to love to show that in these old photos. I guess getting on the roof was the cool thing to do. Of course, you'd never be allowed to do that today in any major event, but back then apparently it was encouraged. And perhaps what we see here is, you know, people moving or the photo being distorted by that. It does give that inclination that there were limits to the technology at the time. Okay, fine, so be it. And then another one of the U.S. Capitol building dome under construction, looking south from the roof of the Senate wing, showing the first row of columns near completion and the cast iron pillars up, 1857. That's cast iron pillars, and then it looks like we have some columns. Although, once again, this photo just raises more questions than it answers because, of course, you have the classic vanilla sky, and you'll say, well, the quality of the photo degraded and they just didn't have the technology. Okay, fine, I can accept those arguments. And it looks like we just have a group of workers that are just hanging out and posing, as they tend to do. Just so much mystery when you look at a photo like this, and you have to wonder about it and wonder about this previous photo because it gives the idea that there's limitations in the technology, but then you have other things going on. You have other things going on that really make you question the legitimacy of it. And who knows how these photos could have been altered. Is this guy like a phantom or something? What is going on here? Strange. But then you contrast it with this. Seascape with a ship leaving port in France in 1857. And look at the detail in this photo. You can see the clouds perfectly fine. You can see the lighting. You can even see the detail in the water. And so I only included this photo just to show you the difference in quality in these images. Because look at this. This is terrible quality in the image. Okay, it's degraded. They had poor technology. Fine. Okay, we can believe it that, you know, it's poor technology, you know, we've got disappearing people and strange things going on here. But then you get to this photo and you see that you can see every detail in it. I mean, the only thing that's different than this being a modern photo is you don't have the color in it, but you can still get the sense of color. It's just an amazing contrast looking at those three photos. Ah, the good old Hagia Sophia, Constantinople, what is now Istanbul, Turkey in 1857. You know, they love to say that 536 was the worst year to be alive. And despite it being the worst year to be alive, it did not stop them from building the Hagia Sophia. A lot of interesting things going on in this photo. Of course, you have this washed out roadway here that looks like it was, I'll just go ahead and say it, flooded by mud or something. Because you can see it for yourself, but I'll just point it out because I can't help myself. And Then you have what appear to be, it's hard to tell what's going on with some of these buildings. I mean, were these temporary buildings, or they just look very rickety? And then behind it, you've got the Hagia Sophia in all its grandeur and glory. Built in 536 and completed on time despite it being the worst year to be alive in human history. And there are plenty of videos that'll tell you why that was the worst year to be alive. Yes, indeed. Oh, don't worry about the bubonic plague. That was apparently an easy time. And let's not talk about 2020. Anyways, moving on. San Francisco and the harbor from Stockton Street, containing the portions between Washington and Sacramento Streets, 1856. Its 1847 population was said to be 459. And you want to know something? I think this could be accurate, and let me explain why. So we're told that San Francisco was a small settlement. The official account says that in 1847, despite it being a great natural port, and we know how natural ports can just suddenly build and expand and grow very quickly, and it makes sense because they have access to the sea. Fine, so be it. But they tell us that the population was 459, and it was small because of the difficult terrain around San Francisco. And if you've been to San Francisco, yes, you have a lot of hills around there and so forth. Yet I can believe that they're being honest about this if we consider the fact that all these buildings were there, because I find it hard to believe that they established all these amazing buildings. And if you look at these, you'll see these aren't just wooden buildings. You've got some larger buildings, and I think we see some pillars here and maybe even a dome back there. It's hard to tell, but just amazingly built out. And this is only 9 years after the population was 459. And of course, we know the big event was the gold rush in 1849. Okay, well, the problem with the gold rush is how in the heck did all these people get across the United States? Did they cross the continental United States without the Transcontinental Railroad? When they had Native Americans that were righteously angry at them for invading their land, if we go off the historical account, so they certainly wouldn't be keen to let them pass. Okay, so then they got on a sailing ship, which is what this picture is supposed to tell us, and you can find other pictures from earlier time frames like 1859. Well, how did all these ships get there? They would have had to go around the Cape Horn, South America. And the waters around Cape Horn aren't exactly easy. It's very treacherous. But okay, sure, we'll believe it. And all these people showed up. Well, going back to why I think the population was 459, I believe that may have been the population of the survivors that stayed in San Francisco prior to the reset and tried to survive it. I think they may have been very accurate when they said it's 459. It's a very exact number, too. And you'll see that in a lot of accounts with many cities. And you have to wonder if when the city started off with those original population numbers, like this for San Francisco is just utterly bizarre. This is a great natural port. If this was in existence, and it should have been because this was originally a settlement, Spanish settlement and that culture, and if you watch the Zorro movies, you get an idea of that. How could this have been so small for such a long time? Just an amazing photograph, and I think it tells more of a story. But those are just my theories. I could be completely wrong, and the mainstream account could be correct, or there could be something else going on with our realities that we're not sure of. But that's how I'm calling it right now, and that's the theory that I'm proposing. And Battery Street in San Francisco, California, 1856. So again, only 9 short years later. By the way, you can find more dramatic photos from 1851 where they just threw the city up in just a few short years. I guess all these people who were coming here, all these 49ers, were amazing engineers and builders. And I know it's been covered in many other channels, but just look at this. So here you can get the idea of brick buildings. Very clearly a brick building. Nice little dome or tower adornment. I mean, why not put the decoration? You can accomplish anything in 9 short years. And well, here it is, an actual dome. More pillars and columns and, you know, because they just brought everything with them. It was really just easy. And San Francisco is always a remarkable city. Just look at the detail right here. Everywhere you look, you see it. Yes, I think it tells a very different story than what the picture depicts. And now we'll look at some individuals too. Samuel Morse, the American artist and inventor, standing in a studio with an automatic telegraph receiver, which would record incoming Morse code messages onto paper circa 1857. Yes. Samuel Morse. Interesting character. Looks very regal and looks very, very well dressed. I don't know. Looks like he's ready for the blizzard to come in. I sure hope they didn't take that photo somewhere down south in the summer. But, you know, maybe there were some different climate situations going on in Georgia and South Carolina. If that's where he posed for this picture, because that's the reason why the land was so arid there. Those droughts that could randomly occur. I never witnessed one when I lived there for about 10 years, but that's okay. It's possible I could miss things. I mean, strange weather anomalies going on right now if you're in the United States, especially if you're in the Midwest. So anyway, just to give you an idea of how someone could look and who knows what's really going on here. I always found the telegraph very interesting because we try to say it's how news was spread across the United States. For example, the John Brown raid into Harper's Ferry, the official account tells us that everybody in the United States was waiting with bated breath to find out what happened. And I remember asking, well, wait a minute, how could they possibly know? They didn't have radio back then even. Oh, they had the telegraph. Oh, so everybody went to the post office, as they depicted in Little House on the Prairie, and then they waited for the person operating the telegraph to read the messages, and they did this every day? Okay, sure, if you say so. Queen Victoria's visit to the Manchester Exhibition of Art Treasures of the United Kingdom, June 1857. I'm not sure which one's Queen Victoria. Maybe right here. Perhaps one of my viewers in the United Kingdom can correct me on this, but I really included the photo because it's pretty amazing. It gives you another example of being able to photograph a large number of people, despite having limited photographic technology at the time. Yeah, we get a little bit of the phantom effect here, and fine, yes, there's explanations for that, but it's remarkable to me how it just seems to apply in some cases and it doesn't apply in other cases. And the answer will be, well, some photographers had better cameras and took more time and longer exposures. Yes, I'm aware of the technical explanations. But when you go through the different photos, you have to wonder what kind of story is being told, and it's always interesting to consider. Peter Force, American editor, publisher, and historian, served as the 12th mayor of Washington, D.C. from 1836 to 1840, circa 1857. Okay, look, I don't know the guy. Quite a name he's got. I mean, with a name like that, you can get yourself elected mayor anywhere, apparently. Peter Force. I don't know, he kind of gives the impression of somebody who's a thug in some way, or somebody who knows what's going on. And I mean, look at that expression right there. You get some interesting expressions, too, when you look at these older photos. I mean, they certainly didn't smile back then, but yeah, this guy has a borderline leer almost on his face, as though he's plotting something, or he knows something. Or maybe he knows nothing and he's just some older gentleman they decided to take a picture of. I don't know. I never really heard him much in historical context prior to seeing this picture and just thought I'd include it. Cloud study over Paris, circa 1850s. We'll get a couple pictures of Paris. Paris is very clearly a beautiful city. And of course, everyone talks about the romantic connections to Paris. And yes, I understand that. Of course, there was an earlier video featured on this channel where we talked about the catacombs of Paris and a very different presentation of what could be going on there. But I included this one because you get some great buildings, and also it does capture the clouds pretty well. Although oftentimes we see the clouds completely washed out. And yes, there's technical explanations for why that happens as well. But here's a photo that shows you can see the clouds and even some decent sunlight. Paris looking back toward from across the Seine, circa 1857. Again, just look at the amazing build-out of Paris at that time. I mean, it almost gives you the inclination that this is the modern city of Paris. I mean, look at the road here. What's exactly going on here? It's like they needed to wash it off like it was covered with dirt. And maybe it was because of all the wagons that were going on it. But just remarkable detail that you see in some of the structures and the traffic on the river. And look at these bridges. They built them during the Middle Ages. Probably built them during the bubonic plague. They would say that. Because, you can build the Hagia Sophia during the worst year in history and it doesn't stop it. So why would it stop people in France from building amazing bridges when half of the population was dying of the bubonic plague, right? Oh, look at this. You got like this little fairy tale tower back here, in addition to the amazing cathedral and the other tall towers. And just look at the detail of all these buildings. I wonder what this photo would look like if we actually had one in color. And that's something else you have to be careful because, we'll have our good friends artificial intelligence colorizing these photos, but we know that's not what they really looked like. So there might be an entirely different picture to see behind it. Morlaix, I think I'm saying that correct. And looks like we got a group of ladies walking about doing their business. And, again, it looks like the area has just been subjected to some sort of force, and it's hard to say what, because again, I see this nature of the arid land. Then of course people might counter that, well, that's just how it looked. It was dirty. It's a port. It's by some water. Okay, fine, so be it. But you've got some amazing buildings with some detail that you always see hidden all over the place. And it's Europe. They probably built it during the 14th or 15th century, or during the Renaissance. They could do all kinds of amazing things during the Renaissance, so we're told. Nice little tower back here. And clearly, I don't know what this is, but you see some bricks around with it. Looks like some sort of, circular trash depository. I doubt that's what it is, but maybe it's an area to moor ships. Maybe you got one down here. Hard to tell. Ah, yes, the Viaduct de Morlaix. This was built in 1861 to 1863, and look at this. Just an incredible structure that they run trains over. And of course, you get another example of great buildings in this little area, but just a remarkable engineering achievement. And I wonder how that's done. So 1861 to 1863, hey, at least they say it took them 2 years to build it, and they didn't just throw it up in a month or so. I'm surprised they didn't say that. Well, you can still see it today, apparently. And it looks like it's holding up pretty well. I mean, people can still walk on it, and trains can still run on it. I mean, look at the arches and all the blocks that went into it. 1861 to 1863. Make of that what you will. They could do amazing things in France. Not only did they record amazing buildings, but they could build them too. Got to give them credit. Yes, the Dome of the Rock, a little photo of Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem's interesting because when you look at it, you do get some inclinations of perhaps the timeline making a little bit more sense, or at least some of the buildings being a little older. Of course, if you've been in that environment and you understand that just going a couple months can take an extreme wear and tear on buildings over there, just with all the fine dust and particles that constantly flow around. But very beautiful, very amazing detail, a lot of arches right here. And nice little tower here. And of course, many other researchers have covered this amazing structure and the remarkable architectural achievements in it. And there's beauty that seems to have persisted in Jerusalem for years. It's perhaps a place where we could really believe the narrative because it does look like it, to be objective. Now let's go back to the United States. Quincy Public Market in downtown Boston, 1857. Oh, yes. And here's where we see our amazing large columns that come up a lot in United States architecture. And here we have this nice dome. I don't know, this almost looks like one of the amazing buildings that was featured in one of the many so-called World's Fairs. Anyways, it's just remarkable to see this kind of achievement. And then even down here on the road, you get the idea, or the parking area. Is this dirt? Is this brick? Not really sure. It almost looks like it could be brick here, but I don't know. I'm not there. Got a horse here pulling a cart, but we're supposed to believe that horses and carts and human labor erected this beauty and did it back before 1857, because obviously it was built before the photo was taken, or at least we'd like to think. Got a nice building back here too. And looks like you've got one of those old style roofs on this building. Boston's got an interesting story to it. And oh yes, by the way, Boston was the victim of another one of those unbelievable magical fires of the 19th century. Boston in a busy Boston harbor looking north from the State House dome in 1858. And when you look closely in this photo, you can get the details in some of the buildings. I mean, look at this. Really? This kind of reminds me of the interior of the Iowa State Capitol, where they have these amazing adornments over every single door. It's quite remarkable. But when you look carefully, you see the little dome rotundas, you see amazing architecture all over the place. And we can try to buy it with Boston. The city's been around. It was featured prominently during the American Revolution in the previous century. Okay, fine. But even so, it's still the same limitations. Horses, carts, human labor. No heavy machinery, rudimentary cranes, which we saw in the earlier photo. And it's just so much detail that's established in a very large city. It's impressive, however it came to be. Parker House Hotel, possibly in the late 1850s, and you see the same thing. And you'll see this in small towns around the United States and all over the world. But, I mean, look at the roof on this. And the detail on the top of it. And right down here in the entryway. Amazing. Just remarkable. And what are these? Are these gas lamps, or are these powered through some other means? And then you've got some more lamps right here. What exactly is going on? Of course, they'll tell us, well, somebody went around and they climbed in and they lit them every night. Okay, fine. But just a very beautiful photo. Great Eastern, while under construction at London's Millwall Ironworks on the River Thames, November 18, 1857. the size of this thing. It's like they built the Titanic long before the Titanic. What are these people doing right here? And, you know, it looks like you got a couple supervisors here with their top hats on. You know, people were all about wearing their top hats back then. But it kind of looks like they're just standing around. It almost looks like this was something that one of the, we'll just call it recovery crews that was going around, because, you know, you got the gentlemen with the top hats on, and there's always questions to be asked when they appear. They found this amazing ship. You know, they didn't say they constructed it. It'd be funny if they said they founded it. You don't see that with large ships. Oh, we had to construct it. Same thing with submarines. I mean, just look at this. I mean, this axis here looks like this is something that they may have built. It was something that we believe that they could do. But just remarkable. And, you know, if you look at the Great Eastern, it was a gigantic ship that didn't really make a lot of sense for building it. And apparently they had a lot of challenge with even getting it into the water. So I'd include that one. Back to the sign in Paris. And, you know, here you see more examples of the amazing bridges, some of the remarkable buildings, all the arches, and then the roof work and the detail. And of course, we'll go back to that story that, well, Paris has been around for a very long time. We'll even say hundreds or over 1,000 years. But still, it's just remarkable what you see. And I'm not even covering, you know, the human activity or lack of human activity in some of these photos. I mean, it looks like there could be a couple people on this bridge and some people over here. Not sure. But it's still amazing to consider. An abbot accompanies students visiting the Roman Forum in Rome, Italy, circa 1857. This guy's an abbot. It looks like he's wearing one of those special hats, and, you know, just found a kid roaming around the area and said, hey, you're coming with me. I'm going to take a look at this. Look at the forum here. And here's what's amazing. So we're supposed to believe that this is the ruins of the forum and that it just stayed here and hung out here for over 1,000 years and nobody messed with it. Look at that right there. Hexagonal walkway, it looks like. Not sure. But all these societies came and went, all these governments came and went, and during the hardest times of human existence, to include 536, the worst year to be alive, according to many sources, and nobody touched any of this, nobody took this. I mean, they tell us that they took the stones from the pyramids in Giza, and of course you might remember this particular building. It was featured in one of my earlier videos, as it bears a striking resemblance to the dome on the Iowa Capitol, even though the Iowa Capitol was built hundreds of years later. And we won't talk about Trajan's Column. We've already been there. Interesting photo. A cathedral in Baltimore, Maryland, 1856. Yes, look at these. This is definitely something we associate with the United States, with this kind of architecture. And look at this walk that this gentleman is standing on. Just incredible. Nice curb there, too. That almost looks like something out of modern times. And of course, we have another one of these incredible lights that's just sitting there, and one back there, too. Amazing buildings. And, you know, it looks like Baltimore, for whatever reason, at least this section of it, was spared a lot of the ravages that came with whatever the last reset was. We even have some trees that look like they're doing well. Another amazing tower. Look at the brick here. I mean, this almost looks like modern brickwork right here. And the stonework. Of course, they tell us it's modern, but we know that the older buildings do have what appear to be better brickwork. But here's a first-hand example of it from 1856. You know, unless you want to believe that this photo was altered in some way, and I'm certainly open to that discussion. And you know, they all could be altered in some way. So that's why it's interesting to explore them and why I say they provide clues. Construction workers build a new jail in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1857. Well, I think they're being honest right there because, you know, the United States, land of the free, is, well, let's just say the prison industry is quite a large industry, and we have quite a large percentage of the population incarcerated in the United States, land of the free. But, okay, so this is St. Paul before the United States Civil War, and even before the Dakota War, which was a Native American uprising that occurred in Minnesota during the Civil War. So we're to believe that Minnesota sent a great majority of its population to fight in the Civil War, but then it also had to contend with a Native American uprising. Interesting story. But you've got some of these buildings, and I mean, here we are in Minnesota, built out buildings in St. Paul, and there's some very severe weather there. I don't know if this is a church or an administrative building or what. Looks like it could be either or, but you also get the impression that there are people that are settling in the area too. So, I mean, there are some clues that the narrative could be on point here, and yet there are things that contradict it. interesting photograph, and you can spend a lot of time looking at photographs just from the settling of Minnesota in that time frame. So we're going to be revisiting this period right after the reset in the 19th century, in the 1850s, and the decades that follow, looking at conflicts, asylums, and indoctrination. But I saw something that I wanted to share with you, so I've included a bonus on this video, the Golden Bridge in Vietnam. Now, I had never heard of this before. I was never aware of this. I did extensive historical studies in Vietnam in my previous career because of the U.S. conflict in Vietnam and also just the ongoing nature of conflict in Vietnam. In 4 decades, Vietnam defeated Japan, it defeated France, it defeated the United States, and it ended it by defeating China. That's what mainstream history tells us. So when I found out about this, and I just happened to see this in random 4K imagery that I typically have playing when I'm assembling the videos, I noticed this image and it just stuck with me. The Golden Bridge in Vietnam, in Da Nang apparently. But just look at this. These amazing stone hands. I'm not exactly sure what they're made of. I haven't been there. And the image just stuck with me, just this amazing vista. I'd never seen anything like this, and I was certainly not aware of it. And I wanted to look into it, and I wanted to share it with you because it's remarkable. And I didn't know the story behind it. And certainly for any viewers who've been to Vietnam, or if I have any viewers from Vietnam, I would certainly love to hear more about the story of the construction of this incredible site. I mean, when I see the detail in these hands, I'm sort of reminded of the detail that you see in Mount Rushmore in the United States and South Dakota. I mean, it's incredible. And I mean, look at this close-up. Look how large this is. And yet the detail in it. I mean, they built this, okay. Who and how? I would like to find out. It's just remarkable and it's gorgeous. It's 2 hands and an amazing view where they established a structure. And here's another angle of it. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they built it. I don't know how they did this. It's incredible, though. And need to look into it. I want to see what the story behind this is. And again, I'm inviting viewers if they know of this construction. And I've already done the initial look for construction photos and haven't found anything. That doesn't mean that they're not out there. I just didn't find them on initial search. So if anybody has construction photos of this amazing structure, I would love to see them. So please let me know. Oh, apparently there's also a castle structure. It looks like a castle in the same vicinity. So I think we're going to have to take a look at this on the big map before we pop out and look at the story behind it. See what the mainstream has to tell us about the Golden Bridge. The Golden Bridge is a 150-meter long, 490-foot pedestrian bridge near Da Nang, Vietnam. It is designed to connect the cable car station with the gardens, avoiding a steep incline. Sensible enough. And to provide a scenic overlooking tourist attraction. Well, even more sensible if you go off the concept of tourism. The bridge loops nearly back around to itself and has 2 giant hands constructed of fiberglass and wire mesh designed to appear like stone hands that support the structure. So they're saying it right here. They're giant hands constructed of fiberglass and wire mesh designed to appear like stone hands that support the structure. Okay. The client for the project was the Sun Group. The bridge was designed by TA Landscape Architecture under Ho Chi Minh City University of Architecture based in Ho Chi Minh City. All right, the bridge opened in 2018. Construction began in July 2017 and was completed in April 2018. It's not quite a year. Very intriguing. So they're saying that those hands are made of fiberglass and wire mesh. I really wonder. I mean, is there anybody out there that was involved with this construction who saw this, who has actually been there and can verify? I'm just asking a question. I mean, this could be all it is. It could just be fiberglass and wire mesh, and a very challenging environment that exists in Vietnam. And, it's pretty. Not sure. Let's see what else. What do Reuters have to say about it? Da Nang, Vietnam. In the mountains of central Vietnam, a colossal pair of hands lifts a golden thread of walkway high above the cliff tops as if the mountain itself has sprouted limbs. Funny they say that. I feel like I'm walking on clouds. It's so unique. It does look unique. It's attracted scores of tourists since it opened in June. I could see why. The pedestrian walkway, designed by TA Landscape Architecture, okay, so it does verify the account, sits at over 1,000 meters, 3,280 feet above sea level, and extends over the treetops. The bridge was designed to evoke the image of a giant hands of gods, interesting, pulling a strip of gold out of the land. Creates a walkway in the sky. But it is the golden bridge and its supports, two huge stone-colored human hands styled in such a way that it looks as if the jungle is struggling to reclaim them, which have garnered the most attention from visitors. The two smooth giant hands look real. Yes, they certainly do. It makes me feel like humans can do anything. With fiberglass and wire mesh. In Vietnam. Okay. All right, well, let's just conclude this by taking a look at exactly where this is. So, we're in Vietnam. Near Da Nang, it would appear. Oh, look at this terrain that this is on. Nice big giant hill. Well, nothing suspicious about that, right? Of course it'd be on a nice big giant hill. And it looks like there's the walkway. And there are the hands. See if we can get on the ground. Or utilizing the man, as John likes to say. Oh, yeah. Fiberglass and mesh. What do you think? I don't know. I mean, it's possible, but they're very extraordinary. What else is on this hill since we're here? Oh, look at that. A couple of castles. Lunar Castle and Ravenstone Castle. We have any access near there? No, of course we don't. Very beautiful. It definitely makes you wonder. Well, I think I'll leave it there. But if anybody was involved in that construction, or anybody has construction photos or knows a little bit more about this interesting story, feel free to share it. That's what exploration is all about. And it could well be this is just a simple contemporary human story, and we just are looking to validate it. There's nothing wrong with asking questions like that. As I always say, ask questions, search yourself, and you'll restore the world. Please like, comment, and subscribe.